All right, let's just get right into it. This is probably one of the biggest questions people face as they get closer to retirement. Do I grind it out till 62 when all the numbers on the spreadsheet look a little bit better? Or do I pull the trigger and retire at 55? Now, on paper, working longer seems like the safe, responsible move. More money, more savings, more security. But there's a huge hidden cost. The reality is, those extra years on the job might be stealing something way more valuable. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack here.
And this quote, man, it just nails the dilemma perfectly. This isn't just a math problem. It's a life problem. We're talking about a direct trade-off. Your most energetic, healthy years. The years you can actually travel the world, hike that mountain, and live out all those adventures you've been dreaming of, in exchange for a slightly bigger nest egg. Here's the thing. You can always find ways to make more money, but you can never, ever get back your health or your time. That's the real trade-off we're looking at.
So what's this number all about? 8 to 10 years? Well, that's the realistic window that most people get for high-energy, active living if they retire at the traditional age of 65. Sure, life expectancy is getting longer, but the number of years you can truly be active and feel great is a lot shorter. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: do you want to start that 8 to 10-year clock at 65, or can you find a way to start it at 55 and maybe even double that incredibly precious window of active retirement? Okay, so it sounds pretty amazing, right? Retire early, enjoy life, but before we get totally carried away with the dream, we've got to pump the brakes and have a serious reality check. Retiring at 55 is absolutely not for everyone. It takes a very specific set of circumstances, and frankly, a certain kind of person. So let's see what it really takes to turn this from a daydream into a workable plan.
It really all comes down to these two pillars. On one side, you've got the financial foundation. And let me be clear, this thing has to be rock solid. I mean, absolutely bulletproof. There is very little room for error when you've got that many more years of retirement to fund. But just as important, and maybe even more so, is the other side, your personal purpose. What are you actually retiring to? A financial plan without a life plan is just a recipe for regret. So let's look at both of these, starting with the numbers.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of that financial foundation. First off, you have to be a super disciplined saver, with a spending rate that's under 5% of your total portfolio each year. If you're starting to push past that 5% mark, the risk that you'll run out of money just gets way too high. Second, you need what the source calls levers to pull. Think of these as your safety valves, the ability to downsize your house, maybe sell a second property, or tap into some other form of income if things go south. Without those levers, you are flying without a net.
And this right here is the other side of that coin. It is so easy to forget how much of our identity, our social life, and even our daily routine is tied up in our career. A ton of people who retire without a real plan for their life, even if their financial plan is perfect, end up feeling lost and, frankly, pretty miserable. So you need to be totally convinced and excited about your vision for what life is going to look like after work, long before you hand in that resignation letter.
Now for the part that might just be the big aha moment of this whole discussion. Retiring early isn't just about getting more time. It can actually unlock a powerful and often totally overlooked strategic window. This is where, from a pure numbers perspective, retiring at 55 can make a ridiculous amount of sense, and it is all about taxes. So what is this magic window? Well, think of it as the gap that starts the second your regular paycheck stops, and it ends right before your Social Security and those required minimum distributions, RMDs, kick in. During these years, you suddenly have an incredible amount of control over your taxable income. You get to decide how much income you create and when, which lets you do things like strategic Roth conversions and pull from your savings in a way that can slash your lifetime tax.
This timeline lays it all out visually. You can see it right there. You stop working at, let's say, 55. For the next bunch of years, you're in this low-income sweet spot. You haven't started taking Social Security yet, which is usually between 62 and 70, and you're years away from 73 or 75 when the government forces you to start taking those RMDs. See that gap? That is your golden opportunity for some seriously smart tax planning. Okay, let's put some real numbers to this to see just how powerful it can be. For a married couple in 2025, the standard deduction is projected to be around $31,500. That means you could pull that much money from a traditional IRA and pay zilch in federal income tax. But wait, it gets even better. On top of that, the first $96,700 of long-term capital gains are also taxed at 0%. You add those two together, and you can create over $128,000 of income with little to no federal tax hit. That is a stunningly effective strategy that's only possible in this very specific window.
Okay, so we get the why, more active years, and this amazing tax window. But what about the how? You can't just quit your job and hope it all works out. You need a specific set of tools and strategies to get through this period successfully. Let's move on and see what absolutely needs to be in your toolbox.
The first idea you have to wrap your head around is that your spending in retirement is not going to be a straight line. It follows this pattern that folks often call the spending smile. In the early active years, your go-go years, spending is high. You're traveling, you're doing stuff around the house, you're checking things off the bucket list. Then, in the middle years, things tend to slow down a bit and your expenses actually drop. And finally, late in retirement, costs might go up again, mostly because of healthcare. Planning for this dynamic curve instead of just a flat percentage is absolutely key to a realistic plan.
Now here's a major hurdle for anyone retiring before they're 60. How do you get your hands on your retirement money without getting slammed by early withdrawal penalties? This is where you need some very specific tools to bridge that income gap until you hit that magic age of 59 and a half. There are two big ones we need to understand to make this work.
This is one of your most important tools for building that bridge. It's called the Rule of 72, and it lets you take penalty-free payments from your IRA accounts before you're 59 and a half. So what's the catch? Well, you have to commit to taking out a series of fixed, regular payments. Think of it like you're creating your own personal pension. Now, these payments have to keep going for at least 5 years or until you hit 59 and a half. So it takes some serious planning, but it can be an absolute lifeline.
All right, now this is super important, how you actually draw down your money. A really common strategy, but one that might not be the best, is to pull from your regular taxable brokerage account first and let your IRAs grow tax-deferred for as long as possible. A much more sophisticated way to do it is to levelize your tax bracket. That means you're strategically taking a little from the taxable account, a little from the IRA, maybe doing some Roth conversions, all with the goal of keeping your tax bracket nice and low and stable throughout your entire retirement, not just for the first few years.
Look, retiring early means your money has to last longer, and that means managing risk is completely non-negotiable. First, you've got what's called sequence of return risk. That's the nightmare scenario of a big market crash right when you retire. You handle that with cash reserves and short-term bonds. Second, you absolutely have to have growth to beat inflation over a 30-plus year timeline, which means you have to stay invested in stocks. And finally, you have to budget for the healthcare bridge, the potentially massive cost of private health insurance before you qualify for Medicare at 65. So, we've spent a ton of time on the numbers, the taxes, the strategies, and all of that is critically important. But now we have to come full circle and get back to where we started, the human element. Because a truly successful retirement is about so much more than what's in your bank account.
And this really brings us back to the heart of the whole thing. You can run the numbers 100 different ways, have the perfect withdrawal strategy, and a completely bulletproof financial plan. But if you haven't planned for your life, for what's going to get you out of bed every morning with some excitement and purpose, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. The money is only the fuel. Your purpose is the destination.
This is the final, maybe most sobering reality check. When it comes to leaving your career, this is a classic measure twice, cut once situation. Once you've been out of the workforce for a few years, especially with how fast technology changes things, trying to get back in at a similar level and salary is extremely difficult. For all practical purposes, there's no going back. This is a decision that requires total conviction.
And so that's what we'll leave you with. It's the ultimate takeaway. The spreadsheets, the tax strategies, all the withdrawal plans, they're just tools. They are all in service of a much bigger goal, and that goal is a fulfilling life. So as you think about your own retirement timeline, whether it's 55, 62, or 70, the single most important question you can ask yourself is this one right here. Because your answer will determine not just the success of your finances, but the success of your entire retirement.